Said I'm about to make history. Said I'm about to make history. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? It's your boy Merkin Mass, and we here with another episode of Black History Year. I hope y'all are staying safe out there, man. Like, it's crazy out here, man, with this corona stuff, man. Damn. Man, when they gonna let us out of here, man? I know all I'm doing is chilling, doing my studying, my reading, working, drinking my OJ and water. That's all I drink, OJ and water. I mix a little something in the OJ, but I ain't gonna tell y'all about that right now. But anyway, we getting into a new episode. We sticking with this theme of the civil rights activists, and today what we're gonna talk about is Stokely Carmichael, the great Stokely Carmichael. I really hope y'all are getting y'all's kids into this stuff, man. Like, cause like for real, you know how they're closing down the schools for the rest of the year all over the place, and even with the schools open, y'all know, like, Black history, like especially with the unsung heroes and the people that they just don't talk about at all in school and history class, these things are really important, you know, because they're really trying to erase a lot of people out of history purposely, systematically, and we cannot let that happen, man. It's really up to us to feed the brains of this next generation. It's really up to us, like, at the end of the day. Now, Stokely Carmichael was born in Port of Spain, Trinidad on June 29th of 1941. His father moved him and his family to Harlem, New York when he was only 2 years old. Carmichael's self-described hip presence in Harlem is what led him to a lot of popularity among his white, upper-class schoolmates. His family later moved to the Bronx, where Carmichael soon discovered the lure of intellectual life after being admitted to the Bronx High School of Science, which was a school for gifted students. His political interest began with the work of African-American civil rights activist Bayard Rustin, whom he had heard speak a bunch of times. At one point, Carmichael volunteered to help Rustin organize African-American workers in a paint factory, but the radical and unfriendly views of Rustin and other similar African-American activists would eventually push Carmichael away from the movement. The Supreme Court declared that school segregation was illegal after African-Americans in Montgomery, Alabama successfully ended segregation on the city's buses through a year-long boycott. During that boycott, they recruited others to stop using the buses until the companies changed their policies. During Carmichael's senior year in high school, 4 African-American freshmen from a school in North Carolina staged a famous sit-in or a peaceful protest at a whites-only lunch counter in a department store. The actions of these students captured the imagination of a young Carmichael, and he soon began participating in movements around New York City. He also traveled to Virginia and South Carolina to join sit-ins protesting discrimination. Carmichael refused offers to attend white colleges, and he decided to attend the historically black Howard University in Washington, D.C. While there, he majored in philosophy and became more and more involved in the civil rights movement. He then joined a local organization called the Nonviolent Action Group, which was connected with an Atlanta-based civil rights organization called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or the SNCC. Whenever he had free time, he traveled south to join the Freedom Riders. Now, the Freedom Riders were an activist group that rode interstate buses in an attempt to end segregation on buses and in bus terminals. Although they gained support in some parts of the country, they met resistance in other areas, especially in the South. In 1961, Carmichael himself spent 49 days in a Jackson, Mississippi jail. One observer said that Carmichael was so rebellious during this period that the sheriff and the prison guards were relieved when he was released. After graduating in 1964 with a bachelor's degree in philosophy, he stayed in the South. He constantly participated in sit-ins, picketing, and voter registration drives. A big turning point for Carmichael in his whole nonviolent movement came one day as he watched as African-American demonstrators were beaten and shot by cattle prods from police. With his activism deepening and as he saw the violence toward both violent and nonviolent protesters, he began to distance himself from those nonviolent methods, including those of Martin Luther King Jr. In 1965, he replaced the moderate John Lewis as the president of the SNCC. He then joined Martin Luther King in his Freedom March. King led thousands from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama to register black voters. But Carmichael had a real issue agreeing with King that the march should be non-violent and that people of all races should be able to participate in it. It was during this march that Carmichael began to express his views about black power to the media. Many Americans reacted strongly to this slogan that some people believed was anti-white and promoted violence. Carmichael's ideas about black power he turned into a book called Black Power, which was co-authored by Charles V. Hamilton. The book advanced the idea that racial equality was not the only answer to racism in America. Carmichael and Hamilton linked the struggle for African American empowerment, or the process of gaining political power in America, to the end of imperialism worldwide. With racial tensions at an all-time high, journalists demanded that Carmichael define the phrase Black Power. Soon, Carmichael began to believe that no matter what his explanation was, the American public would interpret it negatively. Carmichael and his movement began to be seen by many in America as a movement that could start a race war. With the civil rights movement in full swing, the SNCC became more of a way to spread Carmichael's Black Power movement. When Carmichael declined to run for re-election as leader of the SNCC, the organization soon dissolved though. Now by this time, Carmichael's political ideas had started to shift as well. He began speaking out against what he called U.S. imperialism worldwide. Reports told of Carmichael traveling the world making statements against American policies in other countries, especially America's involvement in the Vietnam War, which was fought in Vietnam, in which the United States supported South Vietnam in its fight against a takeover by communist North Vietnam. These reports only fueled dislike and fear of Carmichael in the United States. In 1968, the Black Panther Party made Carmichael their honorary prime minister. He resigned from that post the following year though, rejecting the Panthers' loyalty to white activists. He then based himself in Washington, D.C. and began to speak around the country. In 1968, he married South African singer and activist Miriam Makeba. In 1969, Carmichael left the United States for the Republic of Guinea in West Africa. While there, he took the name Kwame Ture, and over the next decades, he founded the All-African Revolutionary Party. He continued to support a revolution as the answer to the problems of racism and unfairness until his death from prostate cancer on November 15th in 1998. Now, unlike many of his peers who emerged from the civil rights movement, Carmichael's passion and beliefs always remained strong. And that's gonna do it for this episode of Black History Year. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Make sure y'all hit the like button and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Please, please, please. I really need y'all to do that. And let's build up, man. Let's build up. Build up, build up, build up. I really need y'all to do that, man. Let's just keep this building. Let's keep it going. And I'm going to keep on bringing y'all more and more videos. Keep feeding your brain. And let's keep going down a good lane, man. It ain't friend to blame. Am I to blame?
Future looking like the sun when you look in the sun. Lesson for beginners, get checked before you enter in the building.